Present-day society is strongly dependent on fossil fuels. Not only for our energy needs, but also as a resource for countless household products. But fossil fuel reserves are finite, increase in cost, and affect our climate and environment. To maintain welfare for the growing human population, industry is permanently seeking alternatives. Resources that are sustainable, CO2 neutral, cheap, and practical to produce. Solutions can be found closer to home than one may expect, in nature itself. Plant material is particularly viable as a natural resource because plants use naturally existing nutrients, water and carbon dioxide. That's why in the pre-industrial era, wood and cotton were typically used as natural resources. More recently, soy, palm oil, rapeseed and many other candidates have substituted for fossil fuel, each with special qualifications in terms of quality and quantity. But all these alternatives came with downsides. They compete with food production for the use of arable land and require expensive and large amounts of fertilizers. All that is except for one. One plant species can change the entire ball game. It is the aquatic freshwater fern Azolla.
Azolla is one of these aquatic plants that is the world record in biomass producer. So it grows really extremely fast, as we have seen. It doubles its biomass within 2 days. And not only does it produce a lot of biomass, it also produces a very special kind of biomass.
Scientists have discovered that Azolla is hugely effective in turning freely available nutrients into plant-based resources. But to fully understand the potential of Azolla today, we first have to go back in time. About 50 million years ago, our planet was extremely warm and the air contained a lot of CO2. The result? No land ice, no sea ice. The Arctic was subtropical, full of palm trees, hippos and crocodiles. This greenhouse world abruptly came to an end when Earth started to cool, ultimately to our current climate. By drilling Arctic Ocean sediments, climate scientists have found clues as to what caused this sudden cooling trend 50 million years ago. These sedimentary records reveal that at this time, Azolla covered the entire Arctic Ocean. The mass growth of Azolla helped capture the relatively high levels of CO2 from the atmosphere and transformed it into plant material. The result was that the once subtropical Arctic region gradually changed into the much colder place we know today.
Basically, this geologic discovery made us think, what can we do with this special plant? How can we use these special capabilities of Azolla and make it into something that we can use in the future as a replacement of our fossil fuels?
To investigate Azolla's full potential, a group of researchers joined forces. Faced with a hugely intriguing question, plant physiologists, agricultural engineers and organic geochemists teamed up to further develop Azolla as a kind of biomass champion. Here at Plant Research International in Wageningen, the Netherlands, the optimal growth conditions of Azolla are evaluated. It turns out that 35 to 40 tons of dry weight of Azolla per hectare per year can be produced under the right conditions. That's 2 to 3 times as much as most arable crops can deliver.
The most important key advantage is that it produces massive amounts of biomass. Secondly, it lives in association with a bacteria that fixes nitrogen from the air, so you need far less nitrogen fertilization than the conventional arable crops. The third one is that we can grow it in closed systems, and that means that we can use waste streams from the industry like CO2 and heat very effectively. And the fourth, that's that Azolla grows on water, and that means that we can build Azolla farming systems on marginal lands. That means lands where you can't grow arable crops, and that has the advantage that you don't compete with arable cropping systems.
The next hurdle to overcome for large-scale production is the domestication of Azolla. The science team need to capture, preserve and germinate the spores systematically. Here at the Botanical Gardens Research Facility of Utrecht University, plant researchers have developed a protocol for preserving azolla spores and are now investigating the best way to collect and germinate them.
So one of the biggest challenges is that azolla makes spores that are small and don't disperse. So first you have to collect large amounts of azollas, and we have a wonderful protocol for that. And secondly, you have to induce these azolla spores. It takes a little while and that needs to be improved, but that's been successful. And then we know how to grow them in our laboratory so that they become fully germinated sporelings. And these sporelings can then be used as starting material to start a whole production culture of azolla within 2 weeks. And as you can see, we get just massive amounts of spores. You can see the male spores, but if you look closer, there's lots of female spores as well. So this would be enough to already inoculate a whole hectare, if you'd like, of production.
The unique symbiosis with the nitrogen-fixing bacteria is what gives azolla its potential as a future crop. But how are these bacteria passed on to the next generations of this remarkable water fern?
Well, what you see here is the cyanobacteria inside the plant that's responsible for the nitrogen fixation. And it has these bigger, more fluorescent cells, and these are actually the cells that fix the nitrogen. And we are able to see inside the plant, but also inside the spores, where the bacteria is and how it develops in parallel with the plant.
So, azolla, through its unique capabilities, can be cultured cheaply, continuously, and fast. These are the academic facts, but this conclusion also raises some new questions, like what kind of compounds can be extracted from azolla, and as a corollary, which natural resources can be replaced in terms of production costs, nutritional quality, and yield. To answer such questions, we need to visit another laboratory at Utrecht University. Here in the Laboratory of Organic Geochemistry, azolla plant material is analyzed for its chemical content. Because it is a floating plant, azolla produces large amounts of lipids. And these lipids are very similar to the ones in fossil fuels. So, how easy is it to extract those lipids from azolla?
Extracting the lipids from azolla is actually quite simple. It is very similar to making coffee. And what you do is you extract it by pouring an extractant over the azolla, which then takes away the lipids from it, which you then can concentrate. And the remainder is then basically the fiber and also the other compounds which are still very useful in the azolla, which is about 25% of proteins and also about 1/4 of the weight is sugars. And then still there is one very special compound which is also present in high concentrations, and that are the polyphenols. And they are used in all kinds of applications in the chemical industry. So here we have the starting product. This is the azolla plant, dried. Then we get here the lipids and the residue. And this is subsequently divided into the tannins, the caffeic acid, the sugars, and the amino acids.
All these valuable compounds are just waiting to be marketed, and the markets are large. Even in the tiny Netherlands, with its €1 billion market for proteins in poultry and cattle feed. There's also a large market for high-value specialty chemicals for use in all kinds of commodities. And of course, there's biofuel, an enormous market in the making. So how can the researchers take azolla and all its potential out of the academic laboratories and into the real world?
We need business partners to be involved and to step in and to say, okay, let's do this. Let's make azolla a real crop. Let's upskill this process and investigate what we can do for the market in terms of these kinds of commodities and fuels.